Hello and welcome to another episode of our Composting Competition Book Club series. Today we'll be exploring Chapter 4, which analyzes the distinction between attitudinal and embodied compersion. This chapter opens with a powerful quote from Evita La Vida Loca Sawyers, who writes, "I hold an ethic of compersion even when I don't always experience the feeling of compersion." This speaks to something many of us need to hear, that compersion, the idea of taking joy in your partner's joy with others, doesn't always show up as a feeling. Sometimes it's a value we hold, even when our emotions are struggling to catch up. Marie Thouin, the author of this book, echoes this by reassuring us that compersion is not a prerequisite for harmonious, consensual, non-monogamous partnerships. Instead, it's about cultivating what she calls a compersive attitude. This gives us permission to hold space for the very human ups and downs that come with changing relational dynamics, while still encouraging our partners to pursue what brings them fulfillment. In this episode, we'll explore these two kinds of compersion, attitudinal and embodied, and how they manifest in non-monogamous relationships. We'll also offer practical ways to lean into the values of compersion, even when the feelings aren't coming easily. So let's dive in.
Hello.
Hi.
Yay. Well, such a gift to get together with you again in our Chapter 4 exploration of this incredible book. And today, I'd love to start with one of my favorite practices to help us get us in our bodies, maybe settle any energies, support us in transitioning from full work days and all the things. And this is called the mariposa practice. Have we done this together before? No, I love this one. So in this practice, you have a couple options, but you can take your hands like this as a little butterfly.
You know this one.
Oh, good. And I love this one so much, not just for like the name and that kind of metaphor of the butterfly of transformation, but also for me, the tapping is very soothing. So the invitation in a moment is you can either place your hands on your heart and your chest, and we'll tap as slow or as fast as you'd like with as much lightness or as much force as you'd like. You might also want to give yourself like a little self hug. You can also tap this way. And you might experiment as we do this. And I love to, as I'm doing this, just imagine kind of being in that like caterpillar cocoon energy of being like held and wrapped and contained. And I also love to invite a loving phrase. And I'm wondering if there's any phrases or words in this moment that feel especially soothing for you.
Maybe you are supported. I am supported.
Let's do we are supported. We'll bring in the collective. I love that. I welcome all the supports. Amen.
Big week.
I am open to receiving all of the supports at any time. Okay, beautiful. So if it feels good, you might just soften the eyes. You might put the feet on the floor. Welcoming a little exhale, sinking into your chair. Maybe it feels good to take a couple inhales and exhales here, imagining you're letting go of the day. And when you feel ready, you'll place your hands in whatever position feels good to you. Maybe it's those butterfly hands at the heart or wrapped around yourself in a little hug. It's your choice. And softly, just start tapping. And you might softly say to yourself this loving phrase, "We are supported." We are supported. Allowing the shoulders to soften and move away from the ears. Inviting that settling feeling into your chair. You are held and you are supported and you're not alone. And just taking another moment to linger with this practice. Slowly coming to a pause. And one more time, breathing in these words into every cell in the body. We are supported. Taking your time to come back, maybe stretching, yawning, looking out the window.
Oh.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm.
So nice.
Yeah, thanks for playing with me. I love that one.
Mm.
Go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
I always called it the butterfly hug. I love Mariposa though.
The butterfly hug. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome all the hugs.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that phrase so much. We are supported. And before we started this call, I was just thanking you for, the support you offered. Last week, you were on a date with Justin and just feeling the space to invite you into a collaborative space of like co-design for what helps me feel safe. And I really appreciate that so much, like the trust that I can reach out to you and make asks and requests, that like when I'm feeling triggered or like some discomfort or worry, that I can bring that, and it's something like I don't have to be alone in. And I was really appreciating it this weekend, feeling some of my like trigger and then reaching out to you and then having a phone conversation and immediately feeling relief and letting it go, and just feeling how different that's been, like such a different experience to me of having in the past, having really to like hold that alone. So it's, just feeling grateful, welcoming the like active paradigm shift that we're involved in to shift into a more collaborative place of like taking care of each other and supporting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to support you. And I think the more that we can have open dialogue to bring forth the vulnerabilities and get some co-regulation around that and not have to just feel alone in that, I think definitely makes things easier for me too. And knowing what you need to feel supported makes me feel at ease, being like, okay, Salina can support this date. And it's a good feeling for me too.
Amen. I love
Yeah.
that. I think I said to you a couple weeks ago, I said something, which is one of my favorite phrases. I always have time for you. My boss, who I love, Lindsay Fuller, she's phenomenal, a dear friend. She says that for me all the time. And it's like completely been a corrective experience. It's like created this narrative. And when I reached out to you, you said, I always have time for you. And I was like, aw, I love that just like intention that I actually really feel to be true, of like reaching out Saturday morning and being like, can we chat? And then, 2 hours later, you're like, I'm available. I feel that mutual care of like really authentically, like we make time for each other, and that feels so good.
Yeah, it's the best.
Well, let's dive in here to chapter 4, which I really appreciate for a lot of reasons. This kind of deepening some of what we shared already around these 2 types of compersion. I'm going to say this word wrong. It's a mouthful. Is it attitudinal or
Attitudinal?
attitudinal?
Attitudinal, yeah. You can just say attitude? An
Yes.
attitude of compersion?
There we go. That's a little easier. Having an attitude of compersion, or a cognitive, right? Or embodied. I appreciate this conversation so much because I think often that folks we've talked about this before, have this like pressure to from the get-go, like be in this embodied compersion of like actually having these emotional feelings of joy, gratitude, turn on, or exhilaration. And I actually can see that the cognitive and compersive attitudes can be like a stepping stone. And I know Marie's also talked about that this embodied compersion doesn't like need to be the goal. Like we don't even need to have that. But I think this is a really important conversation that I'm excited to have with you today.
Yeah, I think so many people like beat themselves up if they don't feel the compersion, or it's like heralded as like the gold standard of like you must feel compersive to be in a successful non-monogamous relationship. And I think this chapter really debunks that myth, and it's like, oh, what a relief. I don't have to start by feeling a lot of joy that my partner is connecting with someone else, which I think for a lot of people is just not an attainable goal. So
Yes.
yeah, I really like kind of the breakdown of like, okay, we can center into the attitude, and it's okay if we never feel the feelings.
Yeah. Which takes some of the pressure off, right? To give permission. So I'm curious, do you experience compersion primarily as an attitude or embodied? And maybe you can share a little bit too about like the journey, because I imagine maybe it's not always like one or the other. It wasn't this first. Like I'm just curious how you've experienced both an attitude of compersion and an embodied compersion.
Yeah, totally. I think for a long time it was definitely more like really working towards the attitude and just being like, okay, this is hard. I'm having jealous feelings. I feel insecure. And I'm going to really try to put on a brave face or like fake it till I make it and just be like, okay, I really want to support you and having a positive experience with someone else. I'm having a hard time, but I want you to go have fun. So I think that was definitely where my journey started. I think these days I do have more of the embodied feelings of compersion, which is such a sweet feeling. It's like this warm, softening. I don't know. I feel a lot of it like in my chest, like in the heart space. Just like, oh, there's other people who love the people I love. Really finding sweetness in that. And that's taken a long time to get to that place. And I definitely don't always feel the warm, soft feelings. But I think the longer that I worked on the attitudinal piece and really like built that safety with metamours and began to rewire them as not a threat and like remember that like, okay, my partner can go have quality time with other people and he's still going to come back to me. It doesn't diminish our love. It's like, then I could really like internalize, okay, it is safe for me to create space for him to go be with other people. And that doesn't take anything away from me. It actually adds to my life. So I think it's been this really interesting journey of rewiring all of like the toxic monogamous assumptions about what relationships are supposed to be like, how we're supposed to feel, knowing that our partner's out with someone else. And yeah, and I also think it's important to remember that we can hold that compersive attitude and still feel jealous at the same time. And like it's not an either or. And really recognizing that we can aspire towards compersion even when we're sitting with the discomfort, I think is such an important piece of this. Both can exist simultaneously.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that, because I think that's like, a couple years ago would have seen it as like you have it or you don't a little bit. And I know in chapter 5, she starts to talk about compersion as a spectrum, which I'm really excited to talk about. But I like that you can both have jealousy. And I think this is like part of my sensitivity around, we've talked about this often, but it's like whenever I tell people I'm polyamorous, the first thing they say is, I could never do that. I'm so jealous. I'm like, I'm jealous. Like, I'm still jealous. Been polyamorous for a long time. I'm still jealous. Like, and I can still practice at a attitude, compersive attitudes. We're just going to say that. There's something else that you said that actually I really want to note, because I think this is something we're doing together that creates a collaborative paradigm shift. A couple weeks ago, you, me, and Justin met up and we were talking and hanging, and I both have my fear, this like kind of primal but also cultural fear in monogamy of, if Justin has another person they're attracted to, like it's a threat. Like it's so hard to shift that just like very ingrained thought pattern and the somatic experience that arises with that. And that's something that is very difficult for me to work on. And that's something I've explicitly asked you to help shift. And I just wanted to name that something I really appreciate that you do often, as you say out loud, I'm not a threat to your marriage. Like, I'm not trying to take your place. Like, the verbally sharing, like a shifting of narrative. And then I know for you in the past, you have had some harmful experiences with other couples where you felt like your needs weren't prioritized or that you weren't being humanized. And something I've tried to do really actively is to verbalize to you and have Justin and I both, like, we're committed to taking care of your needs. We value you, period. Like, we want to take care of you. Like, and I just wanted to name that because I think that's something that you and I have been doing with each other that's so healing. That's like less of a compersion thing, but for me, it's like this spirit of collaboration practice.
Yeah, and I think that practice of creating safety, speaking to each other's tender places, probably makes it more possible to eventually get to the embodied compersion place, right? It's like if we can hold the attitude of compersion, know what the tender parts are, and really try to give more care to those places that feel insecure or jealousy, it helps it create safety for everyone. And yeah, I really feel cared for by you two. And I think I had some hesitancy going into a dynamic where it is a hierarchical couple. I've not had great experiences with that in the past, feeling super secondary. And I think, yeah, it's been a really like corrective experience to be in connection with both of you, where it's, yes, there is hierarchy here. Like you guys have been together for 12 years and there's space for my needs to be met and like addressed. So I think, yeah, feels like a game changer to be able to like have open dialogues about the tender places. I think that's such an important piece of creating safety in non-monogamy.
Yeah. And I love that, like, really consciously thinking about what creates safety. And again, like, shifting from even that capitalistic, like, I have to do this alone, or I'm going to carry this alone. And it just like actually inviting a shift and like, how do we hold this together has been really beautiful. And I think for me, compersion, sometimes when I think about compersion, I just think about like, I feel pleasure or joy when Justin's on his date. So I'm like, okay, well, that's one aspect of it, but there's also a like those next two feelings for me are like the care I have for you just as a human, like apart from like a woman Justin's dating. It's like the love and the care and respect I have to take care of you feels like a really important ingredient in that. That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes so much sense. Yeah, I think it's so much easier to feel compersion for our metamours when we know them as humans, when we like take them off the pedestal. I think I hear a lot of my clients be like, I could never do kitchen table poly. I would never want to be close to my metamour. And I actually think that's like such a missed opportunity. Yes, it requires like skillfulness, communication, vulnerability, like being able to say, like, talk about our tender things out loud. But I think in doing that and like really like bringing forth our whole selves in all of the tender places, it's an opportunity to get met in a way and like be validated. And yeah, by like recognizing the full humanity of another person instead of just being like, yeah, there's another person over there. Like it's so much easier for me to feel safe in connection, knowing that, yeah, there's another person who cares about me as a human. And
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. So I, was telling you that yesterday, I went through a breakup in June and haven't dated since. Like, I've just been healing and had my grieving process and my healing process, and have been really intentional around like going out to date before I get back out there, like just having, some like introspection. And so yesterday I was like, okay, redoing my profile, putting on more pictures, and also some of the things I added were around kitchen table poly and like speaking to my values around metamour care, which were not things I previously had on my profile. And I think I understand that kitchen table poly. I do think absolutely it does require skill. It does require intention. It does require time. And I know for some people, it's like they may not even have time for dates with the person. It's hard to imagine like, okay, how do I now like invest in this whole other polycule? And I think like I've really become a convert, like a really, I've shifted so much of how I thought about this, both because of the breakup that I had with my ex and the ways that they didn't have space at the time to have a kitchen table poly dynamic, but also through this experience with you in a way that in the past, I think I would have felt like, oh, this is scary, or this is overwhelming, or I don't have capacity for this, or I'm like really struggling to manage this. Like, it's really shifted. It's like, oh, actually I can collaborate with you and it makes it easier, which is the intuition I felt when we connected in May. Justin was like, this sounds like a lot. Are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, I actually have this intuition. It's going to make it easier. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, and then I met you and I was like, yes, like this has made this easier. But for me, there's such a, compersion is like, it's like compersion and collaboration. I just see them so closely connected and as a part of like the decolonization and shifting paradigm process where it's like, we can take care of each other's needs. We can balance them. And there's actually a healing in being able to say, I also told you last week when you guys went on a date to Mount Tam, which I was like sensitive about because it was my place with, like, it's the place where Justin and I fell in love and all these things. And in holding that alone, it's like, I'm in my own stories. I'm ruminating. I'm feeling shame because I'm feeling it. I'm like, it actually gets bigger, like trying to hold it, but something healing happens when I can invite it and name it. And there's like a collective holding of it. And I'm just noticing all of these pieces for me that it's really expanding how I'm looking at this, how I'm looking at polyamory period and dating from a really different lens because of like a lot of the work we've done over the last couple months.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like there's such an opportunity to receive more care when we're open to like connecting with metamours, like in a way that, yeah, mainstream society totally does not understand, right? Like in mainstream monogamous culture, like we should be fighting over Justin's affection and time. And like the fact that like we have built this really sweet, caring connection and friendship, I think is pretty radical and so special. And yeah, my hope is that other people will be inspired to like reach across the aisle and like connect with their metamours and like build some sense of intimacy or like teamwork. I actually have a client who's been watching these series and I invited her to think about like what would it feel like for you to like have a coffee or have a phone call with this person who your partners just started dating. And that was kind of a radical idea for them to be like, oh, that's different. Never thought about that. So I think it's a different approach, not something that everybody has capacity for. And like you said, it does require time and intention and energy. And yeah, if we live busy lives, if we barely have time to see our partners, yeah, the thought of trying to build this whole other complex thing can be overwhelming. And I think there is something that's really powerful in just having like a space of open dialogue or like being in touch or knowing you could reach out if you needed something or like feeling like you're on the same team with your metamour, I think is a really sweet paradigm shift.
Absolutely. Ooh, okay. I'm going to ask you the second question. So what are some ways you've worked to increase your thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors to be more compersive, even when you're not feeling it?
Yes. Great question. I think, yeah, I was thinking about this one. I think there's a lot of things. I think it's really like an intentional mindfulness practice, first and foremost. I challenge all of my group coaching clients to start a mindfulness practice just to like help create more space to be with our emotions and our feelings. And I think just having a space to acknowledge that feeling jealousy or insecure doesn't mean we're failing at non-monogamy is like such an important first step. Create space to feel your feelings and really begin to look at what is underneath them. I often find when jealousy or insecurity arises, it's an invitation to identify underlying unmet needs. The more we can spend time identifying what we're actually craving at that moment, is it attention? Is it reassurance, validation? And then have the communication skills to be able to express that to our partners in a way that they're actually going to receive, right? Using I statements. I'm feeling insecure. Can I have a hug? Instead of like, you aren't taking care of me, right? It's
I've
like
never done
such,
that.
yeah, I have no idea. Never done that at all. But but I think the more that we can be like, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is the unmet need and how can I express it in a way that it's actually going to be received and then met is like a big piece of all of this. I think when I'm not feeling compersive, it's also an invitation to engage with my own joy. I think it's so easy to get stuck in the fear spirals like, oh my gosh, they're going on another date, they're deepening, they're taking a big trip together this weekend, and really getting dysregulated, spending a lot of energy thinking about what other people are doing that I'm not invited to or feeling left out. And I think it's really an invitation to like come back to center and be like, okay, what do I need in this moment? How can I go have my own positive
Mm.
experience and celebrate my own autonomy and freedom?
Mm.
I think is another good practice. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a practice, right? It's like all of this is like such an unwinding of monogamous mainstream conditioning. I think the more we can be compassionate with ourselves and be like, oh, didn't do very good at expressing compersion today. Let me try again tomorrow. Or let me like keep a gratitude journal and try to find all the positive benefits that are coming from my partner getting more of their needs met. I think, yeah, the gratitude piece is another good practice to work with. Helps me shift from a place of comparison and scarcity to one of abundance.
Mm. Well, love that. I
Yeah. What
appreciate all the
about,
work that you've done.
yeah.
I know you've done a lot. It's something I really respect about you, truly, and
Mm-hmm.
feel inspired by. I feel that, and we've talked about this before, but I feel like you have such a sincerity, and I know that's come from a lot of deep personal work. And I'm grateful I get to be a recipient of that.
Thanks, son. Yeah. What about for you? What do you do when you're not feeling the compersion?
Uh, well, I think this is something where I'm trying to be really honest about without shame because I do feel embarrassed. And I think for me, I feel embarrassed mostly. It's like, I'm 43 years old and there's still patterns that I've been working on for like 15 years and I still struggle with them. And I think there's some disappointment and overwhelm, I think, with that. And I think especially as a trauma survivor, sometimes it's like, oh, all this stuff and I'm still impacted by it, but I know I've grown a ton. And even in this, like, from where I was a year ago to now, there's been so much growth, but I am like very rarely in a space of like an embodied compersion. And I think that it's been a huge, and I've shared this in some of our previous sessions, like I feel that I've done a lot of practice to really feel compersion when Justin is doing the things that he loves. And for a long time that was hard, whether it was like his mountain biking trips with his brother. He's very like he loves his woodshop projects or his like house projects, and he can get engrossed in those things like for days. Or like I literally made him a sign for the garage that's like, it's like a kind of like a do not disturb sign. It's like was a cute way of me kind of honoring that actually this is like his sacred time, because he would get so irritated with me when I would disrupt him like working on a woodshop project. So I've come a long way to be like, oh, like he's out in his woodshop, like, and he's having some sweet times, or like he's on a mountain biking trip today, and I'm like, oh, he's there with his brother, and that like I do feel like I'm really, and especially after being married to him for so long, and I really see the impact of when he doesn't do self-care. I see that very clearly. So I really do feel authentically like very happy when I see him taking care of himself. So I feel like I can feel that there, but to really feel like an embodied sense of compersion, like I don't have enough internalized safety to get there. Like I'm working too much on just a baseline of like, we're safe, we're safe, we're safe, we're safe, like
You're
that.
safe. I'm not a threat. I want to take care of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Well, I would just encourage you, yeah, to like remove some of that shame and just like keep feeling the compassion because yeah, like Marie writes, like if you never feel the embodied compersion, you can still
do a great job with all of this, and hopefully this chapter can like be a bit of a balm, like, okay, we're doing great. If I never feel these like warm, bubbly champagne feelings, like we can still thrive in a non-monogamous situation, and hopefully over time together we can keep feeling the support. We are supported, and yeah, move to create more safety for you. Bone safety, I think, is the word that we've been talking about.
Safety in the bones.
Safety in the bones.
Safety in the bones. Bone safety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I received that. I think like, so the attitude of compersion for me has been a really important practice. And I love that you called it a mindfulness practice. And I feel like it's like literally for me, I think number one is like supporting a date. Like, am I at bare minimum, like going to just support it happening as opposed to demanding that he don't do it or getting in a big fight about it or, you know, like somehow interfering, you know, like to me that there really is a big act of like, especially in those times when my schedule is really busy or I don't have a lot of time with Justin or I'm traveling a lot, like, and I feel like actually it feels disruptive, but I'm just like, even verbalizing, like I have to verbalize, like I support this. That feels like a step. And I do try to fake it till I make it sometimes, even with those phrases of like texting Justin or like, I hope you have a good date, or I hope it's fun, or I hope you feel nourished. Even right next to side two, like my anxiety around like, this is threatening, to be able to say those as practices feel important. And things like another step for me is beyond just like, I'm going to support it, is doing things, whether that's like him and I have to change our plans or something might have to shift in our schedule, or I have to collaborate on some level to help make it happen. Like that feels like another way that I can support it, knowing that like I have conditions that help me feel safe. Like if can you end the date at 10, or can we have a phone call, being willing to compromise like around those things. Cause I know that like I have to balance my needs with his without just demanding like, well, no matter how inconvenient it is for you, I need this for safety, so I need you to do it. But being willing to like be flexible and collaborative, yeah, compromising, like feels really important. And I do practice, like even as I'm feeling the anxiety, I do really try to practice naming a different narrative. And I told you this last time we had our meeting, but like about Justin having his love for like a pastry buffet and watching him, you know, so happy, like doing all these things. I actually keep that image in my mind. It's like an anchor image for me of like, when Justin's happy, he nourishes our relationship. Like I want to support his health and his happiness and like the things that he wants. Like there's something about that I've really hooked to. Like even when I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling threatening, like I really try to say those phrases to myself out loud of like anchoring in those core beliefs. That's helpful. Yeah, those are a few things that I do.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, it sounds like it really is a practice for you too, and like a rewiring of all these old cultural stories that it's like, maybe these things aren't serving us. How do we rework this and have compassion and collaborate and, yeah, try to center the care that we all need? It's a journey.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Mhm.
it is.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Well, let's move to this next question. Some research participants experience compersion as a chosen behavior rooted in a sense of duty to empower one's partner's pleasure or supporting our partners in getting their needs and desires met. How does this shift the idea of what it means to be a dutiful polyamorous wife for you? I think it's cute. Does holding an ethic of compersion feel like a sense of duty in your commitment to your husband?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mostly don't use the terms husband and wife with Sky. I feel like for me, it's like, I don't know, the term wife to me just feels like so laden with all these obligations and like the traditional duties. But I think when we can like flip that on its head, and instead of meaning like exclusive loyalty or like responsibility to meet all of one's needs by myself. It's like, how can we commit to something more expansive and celebrate that these needs can be met by a larger group of people? It's like, take some of the pressure off of me. It's like an invitation to embrace compersion as like an ethic, as part of our commitment to love each other in more expansive ways, rather than something obligatory. And yeah, it's like, how can we keep choosing to support the broader fulfillment of our partner's desires and recognize that their happiness and pleasure and growth can be enriched by relationships with others? I'm going to keep trying to hold this space and demonstrate my love for my partner, even when it's hard, and continuing to empower his connection with other people feels like a really powerful practice of mutual support that invites in the freedom and the self-growth that we're really committed to. What about for you? Do you resonate with the idea of being a dutiful polyamorous wife? Like, how to
it's funny because I think there's something kind of cute to me about that I appreciate. It's I take a lot of pride in how I care for my husband. And the word wife and husband, like, I can totally understand why there's like some charge around that. I also, have been using the phrase sugar baby with Justin because I'm like loving this new dynamic. We have a little bit of like me spoiling him and being in a position. And some of my friends have been like, ew, sugar baby. I'm like, I hear you. I hear you. And there's something actually really resonant in it to me. So I get there can be stuff around, like, especially as a woman, like wife, but they're actually, I feel deep, pride. And like, I take care of my husband, and it feels really good to me in all the ways, whether it's like, the cuddles and the kisses and the affection, or like the
moosh goosh, I think
the
I heard you
moosh
guys call
goosh.
it.
Yeah, the moosh goosh. We call it moosh goosh. Like, I love being his wife, and I love caring for him. And so that's part of like the bridging that I know I try to do when I'm feeling contracted and scared, of like, this is part of my care. And, when Justin and I got married and we wrote vows, part of my vow was to be the guardian of his solitude. And that's like his language. Because, the sign on the garage door that I had to make when he's like in a project and does not want to be interrupted. Like, I've understood even years ago in the beginning of our relationship, like he needs that commitment from me, whether it has to do with polyamory or not, around his care and his thriving. And in our vows, that was part of my commitment to him, of like, I like vow to be a guardian of your solitude and support your, like, the needs that you have. And so it does feel good to anchor in that feeling of like, for our marriage, respecting his freedom, and really his freedom and his happiness, and the care is something I'm really committed to. And I love caring for my husband. So I want to care for him in this way, even though it stretches me and terrifies me and all those things sometimes, but it's like a part of our value system. Serious job. And I would say, even, again, I've said these things before, but it's like that sometimes even feels harder than like, or I'd say equally sometimes it's like understanding his individuality, or like his need for space, or his desire to go do things on his own. Like, those can also be hard. When I want connection, is like, which is one of the reasons polyamory really works for us, is because I'm such a social extrovert and he's such an introvert. And it's actually been a requirement that I surround myself with other people who want to be extroverted with me and social, because he does want to go in the garage and lock himself in there for 12 hours with no interruptions. I wonder if you can relate to that with your husband.
He and Sky are so similar. Yeah. Sky's also like, when this office door is closed, you do not knock on it. And for a long time, I was like, don't you want me to bring you lunch? I made this beautiful meal. He's like, leave it in the kitchen. I'm like, okay.
So funny. I used to do that all the time with him. I'd be like, here's the sweet lunch. He's like, I don't care about the lunch. Leave me alone. I'm like,
you're distracting me. Yeah. Yeah. Well, for us, it's been this journey of learning about his ADHD and neurodivergence. And I used to take it kind of personally, like it was like a rejection of this gift. And for him, it's like, no, really, like when I get distracted, it's really hard to get back in my flow. And and like better learning about the ways that we are different. Now I don't have to take that so personally. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to make lunch. It'll be in the fridge. You can eat it when you want. And you can be in your own flow. But I'm also just remembering when the three of us went to the river, me and you and Justin like immediately disappeared to like go be with the trees and go have a swim. And you're like, oh, it's really nice to have a third person here to keep me company.
I felt that a few times. Like the other last time we all hung out and Justin was like, okay, I'm done talking to you guys. Because he has a lower bandwidth for emotional processing, even as a therapist. He just like, and you and I are both such verbal processors.
He's like, I've been talking to people all day. Yeah. I'm going to tap out. You guys can keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so nice, actually. It was like really feeling that actually of a benefit of a polycule and an environment where it's like, because I think both of us had a need to keep verbally processing. And we did for like 2 more hours. I was like, oh, this is so lovely. He was gardening, had his headphones in, didn't want to talk to us. It's fine. Which is, again, just like really shifting this idea of like, my husband has to be the be all and end all, and I have to be the be all and end all. And it was interesting, actually, because that day, you know, it's a newer thing. Like, I want to be really honest as people watch this. It's like kitchen table poly is really new to me. And you're the first partner that we've spent this kind of time with and invested in and felt safe enough to do this. And it's been really sweet to me. And so that was like the second time, or I don't know, third time or something, that the three of us had hung out, even though you and I have been developing this friendship and connection, like the three of us hanging out. And so I still had nerves or like sensitivities around it, or like not totally knowing like how this is going to feel or go. And told Justin, you know, I don't know how it's going to feel if like he wants to have one-on-one time with you and then I'm going to be there, and is that going to feel hard? And we talked about that, but when he was feeling complete and you were like getting ready to go, and I was like, actually, do you want to stay and hang out with me for a little bit? And I had this like click go off around that too, around actually how healthy and beneficial it is to like have multiple layers of connection, and that even you and I connecting can benefit the connection between the three of us, but also like all the connections, which is something I'm really working to shift. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I know Justin has questioned a few times, like, are you sure you and Salina want to spend this much time? Like, you're a coach, like, does this feel like emotional labor? And I'm like, no, honestly, it's really, I'm enjoying this. I don't have other people to have this conversation with. So I think there are so many benefits of like being in a closer connection with you. And I mean, I have Bex and she and I, have our own connection, but it's different. And yeah, I think having a space to have these conversations and be able to talk about our feelings. I know we're both big feelers. Feels really supportive and sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's like something else I'm so curious about, because primarily we've been talking about like compersion for our partners, like our primary partners or nesting partners, husbands. And I am curious about the compersion for metamours. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that at all, like with the attitudes of compersion and embodied compersion, like where you felt with some of your metamours.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I have had metamours where I have really struggled to feel both the attitudinal and the embodied compersion, where it's kind of like, this is not the person that I would choose for my nesting partner to date. And I think that is a really challenging situation. Like, we don't have veto power. Like, I can't be like, you can't see this person anymore. Yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, this is challenging. I'm going to try to like anchor into my attitudinal compersion for him. And maybe I'll eventually feel it for her or for them, but it doesn't always happen that way. In this particular moment, the other women that he's connecting with, I really appreciate and like feel a lot of benefits. And I think they're good fits for him and really support him in ways that other people have not been able to. So I do feel more compersion, like in all of the ways for them. And I think that's such a nice feeling to be like, oh, there's other people supporting you, and I trust them, and I know that their intention is good, and and we have direct lines of communication. And I mean, even thinking about you and this breakup that you went through, and felt very similar to like the breakup I had, where it was just like got dropped, not a lot of spaciousness to process with them. And so I think I really felt that pain that you went through. And I think there's part of me that like feels protective of you as you're like, ooh, maybe like, are we going to re-engage here? And I'm kind of like, you better earn it. Like, you're a valuable human. You better prove that you're going to take care of her, which is an interesting feeling, just to, yeah, to be a little like, yeah, don't fuck with Salina.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate that. So protection's one of my love languages. So I like to feel, I welcome any protective feelings.
Yeah.
I welcome that. Yeah, I hear you. Honestly, I don't think I felt compersion for anyone but you. But it's different. It's interesting to me because I feel like I'm in a friendship with you and I respect you and like you so much. So it's almost separate of Justin, which it's like, oh, I want you to be happy. And it actually really helps. What's the word I'm looking for? De-escalate, or like part of me wants to say it puts me in my best behavior. That's kind of a funny way to put it. When the three of us were talking or processing, Justin had named too. He was like, wow, that was actually really nice. He's like, I was surprised because he was really worried I was going to get triggered. We were talking about something kind of tender between the three of us. And I didn't feel that. I mean, I felt like there were some tender moments, but I never felt like I'm so dysregulated and I'm going to. Whereas when Justin and I have some conversations, there are moments where I feel dysregulated and then I can act out and have poor behaviors that I don't feel proud of. But with the three of us there, it kind of actually, there's a way where it's like, I want to show up for you in a way that feels good. And I want you to have a positive experience. Like, and I think that's what I'm talking about too, with, to me, sometimes compersion sounds like such a, like it's up here. And for me, I feel like it's easier when I can be like, oh, happiness, care, humanizing each other, wanting what's best for each other, collaboration, which I feel like really is actually a foundation to create something like compersion. But I feel that when I think about, I think I'd shared with you, I'm experimenting because my art transitions back from dates historically have been hard. And so I've been experimenting with saying, can we have an earlier end time, which then provides some safety, provides enough time for us to reconnect before we go to bed. And it's different for me to request those things with some balance of your needs, because I'm like, I know you haven't seen Justin in a while. And I know it's hard for you guys to connect because you guys live so far apart. He lives in the Bay. We live in Grass Valley. Like, though I am balancing those needs in a way where maybe in the past I haven't cared so much. I was like, well, whatever. Like, I don't care.
Not my problem. Yeah. Who cares about her? Yeah.
Exactly. Seriously, And so it's so different to be like, oh, well, it's Aria. And you had also shared in one of those tender conversations, like you feeling a need in your life right now for some more connection and care and cuddles and all those things. And I can hold that in my mind of like, okay, I want you to have those things. I care about you, which is like the closest bridge I can get to right now.
I mean, I accept that. Yeah. I accept your care. Yeah. It's sweet to know that I'm your first compersive metamour. I love that. It's very sweet.
Aww.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Was there any other thoughts that have bubbled up in this conversation that you want to share before we move towards our close?
I really appreciate this kind of analysis of all the different ways compersion can show up, and it's helpful to like break it down. Like, okay, I can like root into this desire to support and be caring and empathetic, even if I never feel the warm, glowy compersion. It makes it more accessible. So I'm grateful for this chapter.
Amen. Is there any intention you want to set around embodied compersion or an attitude of compersion in the next couple of weeks before we meet again, like whether that's for your metamours or for some of your partners.
Yeah, Sky and Bex have a big weekend coming up together, and I think my intention is just to really keep centering the benefits of them having more time and space together, and remember that his time with other people doesn't have to be interpreted as a threat to me. And yeah, I guess my hope for us is that we can just keep building safety so that you can keep deepening into your conversion feelings, and would just invite any conversations that need to happen, or if there's more care that you need around things. My intention is to create a space where we can collaborate and talk freely about all that and work as a little team.
Aw, love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love
What
that.
about for you?
You know, this relationship between safety and compersion are so closely related. And I'm always, I think, trying to work on creating my internal safety. And I'm really, really holding that close is like, how do I keep working on building, like having my fierce commitment to my internal stability and really holding close my intention to support Justin's happiness. And in the busyness of our lives, like, and when I'm traveling and he's traveling, it actually becomes quite easy to forget that because I'm so fixated on like our to-do list and the house projects and the thing that needs to be done. And we need to, it's like, it really can take me out of like just embodied presence. And it does take a fierce commitment for me to be in my internal stability and really consciously, when Justin has dates, to center my my values in this, my desire to support him. And I really appreciate how collaborative you've been. And you and I've been talking about, what's the right balance of that. I think it's something we're really listening for, like how we hold this together. But I'm going to try leaning in a little more proactively with you around whenever you guys have your next date and just see if that helps diffuse things for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I know he's traveling and probably won't see him for a month or so, but we could definitely talk about that come November. And yeah, would totally encourage that, leaning in and figuring out what the balance is and how we can collaborate to, create more safety. I'm here for that.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you want to close with a little mindful moment here?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, so maybe we just close with that same practice again. So if it feels good to turn inward, soften the eyes, maybe place the feet on the floor. And if it feels good, we'll take that same mariposa stance with the hands, either resting them on our heart or around the arms in a sweet self hug. Just hanging out here and tapping. And breathing in this phrase, we are supported, we support each other. Slowly coming to a pause. We are supported, we support each other. Coming back, opening your eyes. Yay!
Yay! Thanks for that practice.
Yeah, thank you, love. Thanks for being here with me.
Yeah, thanks for all the support.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. See you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Chapter 5.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Sounds good, love.
Okay, friends, that brings us to the close of this episode where we've unpacked the two kinds of compersion, attitudinal and embodied. I hope this conversation gave you some new insights into how we can all practice holding an ethic of compersion, even when the feelings themselves are challenging. Remember, it's about showing up with intention, holding space for ourselves and our partners as we navigate these relational shifts together. If you're finding value in these book club discussions and want to stay connected, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter at ariadiana.substack.com. You'll get all future episodes delivered right to your inbox, along with exclusive content to support your journey in non-monogamy and beyond. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to continue exploring these topics with you next time. Until then, take care, stay curious, and keep practicing. See you soon.